Hi, Dr. Sean Woods from the Healing Vibe. We are moving away from the upper GI, pancreas, stomach, gallbladder, liver, and we're now going to talk about the small intestine. And, the small intestine is kind of no man's land in the world because it's hard to view this. It is hard to study this. It is hard to get pictures of what goes on in this small intestine. If you want to look at a picture of it. Here's the small intestine. This is all the small intestine, 18 to 22 feet of it sitting in here. And you see how the large intestine comes around. And it's all kind of twisted and molded and packed into a small place right in here. And when you look at the surface area of it, the small intestine covers over 2 tennis courts. So lots of room for absorption. Within the small intestine, you see what we call microvilli. They are these little kind of cilia hairs that have a kind of a mucal coating over them, and it's where the bacteria, some of the bacteria of the digestive system live, and they help to break down our food. And it is these cilia that kind of move in. There's cells that butt up to one another in the small intestine, and these junctions kind of loosen and open and hopefully only allow for very small particles to move through that small intestine and into the body proper, is what I call it. When we swallow food and we eat food and it kind of goes through our digestive tract, it's still considered to be the outside world, meaning it hasn't become us yet. And as things absorb into our body, then our body starts to deal with them and say, okay, what are we going to do with this? Is this going to be energy? Is this going to become a body part? Is this going to help for cellular metabolism? Is this going to go into the cell and perform whatever action it's going to create? And what ends up happening in that small intestine is we get those loose junctions. So things start moving into our bodies that we don't want. And that's where many of these autoimmune cases, autoimmune diagnoses, autoimmune diseases, that's where many of these things start stemming from, because things get into our body that shouldn't be there. There's a protein called zonulin that kind of regulates what goes through this permeable layer of the small intestine. And what's interesting to note is that zonulin is also the protein that helps to regulate the blood-brain barrier, that little sheath that kind of allows things into the brain too. So what you see is when you see a destruction of the cilia and a destruction of the zonulin, and these gaps start getting bigger, you also see a leakage in the blood-brain barrier. And that's how things start getting into the brain and getting into parts of the body that shouldn't be there, and over time does create many of those neurodegenerative problems that we see today, from Alzheimer's to Parkinson's to MS to ALS, depending on where that occurs. And once plaquing starts occurring in that brain, it can be super hard, if not impossible, to correct. The small intestine is kind of right in the center of our solar plexus. It is that green chakra. It is that chakra that corresponds mostly to the heart. Many people, obviously, you think of the heart as where love resides, but actually love manifests itself and begins in that solar plexus, in that small intestine. The color of the chakra for the heart is green, and I write in my book, that's exactly what the small intestine loves. It loves green things. It loves chlorophyll. It loves that life. We will talk later on about photons of light and how we are, in essence, light beings. It's very hard to kind of comprehend that when you don't see that happening many times, but that is exactly how this body is functioning. And that's why I continue to push fruits and vegetables in my book, because when you're eating green and you're eating the other colors of the spectrum, you make that small intestine super happy. We're always talking about the microbiome in my office, and the good bacteria, the good bugs that you want thriving in your GI tract love fruits and vegetables. And when food, we talked about that upper GI not performing its task of properly preparing food for the small intestine so proper absorption takes place. When foods sit in that small intestine and you see fermentation and you see rancification and you see putrefaction, the bad bugs that you do not want, from parasites to yeast to the bad bacteria and viruses, they have to show up on planet Earth in the microbiome that we are. When you have undigested food in your body, which is rotting, the good bacteria that create your happy consciousness, that create your well-being, that create your vision of how you see this world, get deadened, and the bad bugs start to show up, and it really messes with mood, and it messes with emotions, and you'll see that connection again and again and again as I talk about it in my book. So get on a diet of high fruits and vegetables. Some of the things that the body likes in terms of supplementation for the small intestine, especially when you haven't been getting it, is things like chlorophyll, things like okra, things like fenugreek seed. You see herbs like slippery elm, willow bark, many herbs. The herbs of this planet help to heal and soothe and feed those good bacteria in the small intestine. So next we're going to be talking a little bit about leaky gut, so stay tuned.